Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 10 wide receivers that will win leagues in 2024 fantasy football. 10 wide receivers that I believe will help you guys take home that fantasy football championship in 2024. But before we can get on into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money while you're down there. Whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure they do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with the first league-winning wide receiver, and that is Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. Aggregate ADP wide receiver 5. At pick number 8, the aggregate ADP is sourced from ESPN, Sleeper, NFL, and RT Sports. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown, to me, feels like one of the safest selections inside of the first round. His projection in terms of targets is going to be very high, as the Dan Campbell-led Detroit Lions love to throw the ball. Jared Goff's number one target is very clearly Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, there has been some hype for Jameson Williams, and they do have other weapons like Jahmyr Gibbs as well as Sam Laporta, who can catch passes, but Amon-Ra St. Brown will be the clear number one receiver on this offense. Last year, he played a majority of the season through a torn oblique and was still the wide receiver 3 in terms of PPR points per game, ranking top 5 in targets, receptions, receiving yards, as well as in total touchdowns. 164 targets, 119 receptions, 1,515 receiving yards, and 10 total touchdowns in 16 games. He ranked 8th in target accuracy, 7th in yards per route run, 12th in true catch rate, and 5th in contested catch percentage. The Detroit Lions on paper should be one of the best offenses in the NFL. Yet again, I believe Amon-Ra St. Brown is up there with some of the top wide receivers in the NFL in terms of skill set. We know that he is going to get fed the ball game in and game out and could easily average 10 plus targets like he did last year, 10.3 targets per game. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not only a safe pick, but he has significant upside game in and game out and is barely ever going to fall outside of the top 24 at the wide receiver position weekly. I think in terms of being a first round pick, he is a certified smash. Hulk style. At number 2, we got Justin Jefferson, Jay Jetta's wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings, aggregate ADP wide receiver 4 at pick number 6. Now, there has been a lot of people that are nervous about Justin Jefferson because of the quarterback situation in Minnesota, right? People are worried about JJ McCarthy or mono man Sam Darnold. Now, I'm not going to sit here and give JJ McCarthy the Suka-Lamink because of one preseason performance, but I think that preseason performance shows you that JJ McCarthy isn't some complete and utter fucking bum, and that JJ McCarthy can air the ball out. Despite the quarterback situation being less than ideal, going from Kirk Cousins to JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold, I think that preseason game 1 performance shows you it will be JJ McCarthy. Justin Jefferson is going to be perfectly fine. Now, I understand that he was a bust last season. You picked him number 1 overall because he only played in 10 games, right? He wasn't a bust because he ended up having this awful season when he was healthy. It was just because he only played in 10 games. Now, if you use the sample size last season of the games he played without Kirk Cousins, he played 5 games without Kirk Cousins. If you take that and put it into a 17-game sample size, he had 108.8 receptions, 159.8 targets, 1,710 receiving yards, and 6.8 touchdowns. I understand that going from Kirk Cousins to JJ McCarthy might be a little bit scary, but Justin Jefferson is still one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in the National Football League. He is going to put up huge numbers regardless of the quarterback play, so don't be scared. Don't get your panties in a bunch. Draft Justin Jefferson in the first round. Now, I still would rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown over Justin Jefferson, but if Amon-Ra St. Brown is already taken and you want to go wide receiver, I like Justin Jefferson. He is currently my wide receiver number 4 behind Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. At number 3, we got Maserati Marvin Harrison of the Arizona Cardinals, aggregate ADP wide receiver 8 at pick 16. Now, I know that when you hear that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a rookie and he's going inside of the second round, that is going to instantly make people panic. But what you need to understand is that last season we had Puka Nacua, who I understand was undrafted in a majority of leagues, finish inside of the top 8 at the wide receiver position as a rookie. So it's not impossible for Marvin Harrison to come out, swing his dick around like an Indiana Jones whip, and smack the defense in the face, Will Smith style. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a dominant prospect coming out of The Ohio State University. 12 games played, 117 targets for 67 receptions and 1,211 yards, 18.1 yards per reception with 14 total touchdowns. Back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 years with 1,200 plus receiving yards in college and 14 touchdowns. I understand that he is a rookie, so that is going to make people worry. But we have seen rookie wide receivers smash in years past, and this isn't 10, 15 years ago where rookies slowly get ramped up, right? Where they kind of use just the tip technique, right? They don't go fully balls to the wall, whereas now Marvin Harrison is the clear number 1 wide receiver on an offense that is going to be better than people perceive it to be, with a quarterback in Kyler Murray who is incredibly competent. Marvin Harrison Jr. will be the number 1 target in this offense. I get that in preseason week 1, he barely played any snaps, but what that tells me is that the team is already very confident in Marvin Harrison Jr.'s ability to run with the ones, and I would not worry at all about him. I think his upside is significant in the second round. This is a guy that could lead the National Football League in targets, and targets are obviously very beneficial to scoring points by catching the ball, getting the receiving yards, and scoring them touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr. is an amazing wide receiver prospect. You turn the games on at Ohio State and your eyes will ejaculate. I'm a huge fan of Marvin Harrison Jr. and think that he is a great pick in the second round. At number 4, we move a little bit deeper into the wide receiver ADP with Cooper Kupp, wide receiver of the Los Angeles Rams, aggregate ADP wide receiver 18 at pick 38. Now, if you drafted Cooper Kupp last year in the first round prior to his injury, because he did end up getting that hamstring strain prior to the season, which made him miss the first 4 games of the season, you are obviously disappointed. But if you got him at a discount, it wasn't all that bad of a season. Now, when you compare it to seasons prior, right, where Cooper Kupp is on top of the world, one of the best wide receivers in all of the NFL, sure, it was disappointing. But you need to put context into things. Context is key in fantasy football. Suffering a hamstring strain in the preseason is going to hurt a wide receiver badly, right? And Cooper Kupp was kind of passed up by Puka Nacua in the offense because of this. And I still think that even if Puka Nacua is still the 1A in this LA Rams offense this season, then Cooper Kupp being the 1B is still going to have the upside to be a top 10, top 5 wide receiver in any given matchup. He was the wide receiver 24 in PPR points per game last season. And again, despite suffering the hamstring strain, which is something that lingers into the season, even when he was good to go, it was still going to impact him. He ranked 22nd in fantasy points per route, 19th in route win rate, 21st in target separation, and 13th in true catch rate. And he had multiple games last season where he was ripping off 25 plus points. He scored 25 plus points up against the Ravens in week 14, up against the Commanders in week 15, and up against the Arizona Cardinals in week number 6. Now, the consistency was definitely not there last season, right? He would go out and lay the SmackDown brother WWE style on a defense one week and then be ice cold, right? From week 7 through week 12, he didn't score more than 10 points in any of those games. Whereas I think this season, we're going to see a lot more consistency. The coaching staff of the LA Rams, the beat reporters, have been sucking this guy dry in terms of the fact that he looks more like he did back just prior to last season. Puka Nacua is currently dealing with an injury that could impact his start to the season. So Cooper Kupp could come out week number 1 as the number 1 target on the LA Rams offense. I expect a huge bounce back this season out of Cooper Kupp, and I love his ADP, even though it keeps on rising in the third round. I am 100% fine with taking him, and in some leagues, you're going to be able to get him in the fourth round. At number 5, we got Jaylen Waddle away, waddle, till the very next day of the Miami Dolphins. Aggregate ADP wide receiver 20 at pick 42. Jaylen Waddle was another one of these guys that was a bust Krakatoa at the wide receiver position last year. Based upon where you drafted him, he was a guy that had you sleeping with the fishes, Luca Brasi style, right? Jaylen Waddle was the wide receiver 21 in PPR points per game, tied with former Alabama teammate Devontae Smith, the Slim Reaper. Only 14 games played out of Waddle as he missed multiple games. 104 targets, 7.4 per game, 72 receptions, 5.1 per game, 1,014 receiving yards, 72.4 per game, and 4 total touchdowns, 43rd. Though, in terms of efficiency, he was second in route win rate, so this guy was always open, 7-11, Waffle House style. He ranked 9th in expected points added, which is a very important metric at the wide receiver or running back position. 13th in terms, in terms of every position, right? 13th in target separation, and 14th in fantasy points per route run. Now, if you look at last season and you compare him to the last couple of seasons, his prior 2 seasons outside of last year, right? But he had 115 plus targets, 75 plus receptions, 1,000 plus yards, and 6 plus touchdowns. So what's more likely, that Jaylen Waddle had one down year where he was banged up, or that Jaylen Waddle is a complete and utter bust? He is just washed, and the Dolphins gave him all that fucking money for zero reason. What's more likely, right? This guy that was able to get open at a very high rate last year just wasn't getting as many targets, is just finished, or that he had a down season, you kind of just brush it to the side, and he's going to bounce back in 2024. I think that is the more likely scenario. I think we do see the Dolphins feed the ball a little bit less to Tyreek Hill, meaning just forcing him the ball even when in times he wasn't open. Again, is Tyreek Hill going to potentially finish as the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football? I definitely think so, but I think there's room for improvement in terms of Jaylen Waddle. I think this is a guy that if you blinked, we got to the end of the season and Jaylen Waddle scored 10 touchdowns, not a single one of you motherfuckers would be surprised. So Jaylen Waddle should be in for a huge bounce back season. If we expect the Dolphins to be as good as I do and as good as most people think they will be, Jaylen Waddle is a sure fire bounce back candidate, and now you get him at a huge discount compared to where you had to draft him last season. It's a fire sale, Call of Duty zombie style. At number 6, we got Wiki DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears, aggregate ADP wide receiver 22 at pick 45. Now, DJ Moore, I actually have ranked ahead of Jaylen Waddle as well as Cooper Kupp, but the reason why people have some sticker shock, they're nervous at the price, is because of, 1, having a rookie quarterback, and the fact that they drafted Rome Odunze and bring in Keenan Allen. Now, watching preseason week 1, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like preseason week 1 is the end-all be-all, right? If you have a good game in preseason week 1, it means you're the second coming of Patrick Mahomes. If you have a shitty week 1, you're basically dust, right? I don't think that. But we saw DJ Moore play well in that game, and we saw Caleb Williams be able to navigate excellently inside of the pocket. His pocket presence was amazing. He was able to run out, throw some ropes. It was looking a little Mahomey out there, and I think that DJ Moore is the best wide receiver on this team. DJ Moore put up huge numbers with Justin Fields and Tyson Bagent under center last season, and Caleb Williams is levels above those guys. Wide receiver 6 in PPR and 9 in PPR points per game. 17 games played, he ranked 14th in targets, 12th in receptions, but he was 6th in receiving yards and 10th in terms of total touchdowns with 9. He ranked 4th in dominator rating and 8th in terms of contested catch percentage. Sure, is there more competition than what he had last year in Tyler Francis, Scott Key, and with Darnell, here comes the Mooney? 100%. Are Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze going to get theirs? 100%. But I think with better quarterback play, with a better offense as a whole, because the Chicago Bears offense last year was not good. So if the Bears offense takes that leap to the next level, we could see both DJ Moore and one of Keenan Allen or Rome Odunze both have top 24 seasons. DJ Moore is coming off the board at a large discount, right? He's a top 10 receiver last season, but yet is the wide receiver 22 because people will panic. I get there's reasons to understand why some people might panic, but at that price, it's not like you're drafting DJ Moore as the wide receiver 10, right? He's not a first or second round pick, right? Where he is your wide receiver 1. There are teams you can draft where DJ Moore is your wide receiver 3, right? And DJ Moore could be your wide receiver 2 if you go a little bit more running back heavy earlier on. And as that wide receiver 2 or 3, with the upside he possesses, with the upside that Caleb Williams possesses, I think there's a lot of untapped upside here. Again, the guy put up big numbers with Tyson fucking Bagent, who no one has ever heard of outside of before last season, besides maybe his family, and then Justin Fields. So again, I don't want to just be some glazer doing tricks on it for Caleb Williams, but I think a lot of people are undermining the ability of Caleb Williams, and I think a lot of people are just hesitant to draft DJ Moore because of the loaded wide receiver room. Again, do I think this is the next Houston Texans offense that's going to take off in year number 1? Maybe, maybe not, but I think they are going to beat out a lot of people's expectations. I think DJ Moore is the clear, locked and loaded number 1 receiver on this offense. At number 7, we got Tank Dell of the Houston Texans, aggregate ADP wide receiver 29 at pick 62. Tank Dell is another guy that is getting pushed down the board due to the wide receiver addition on the team, right? They already have Nico Cousin, Let's Go Bowling Collins, and then they bring in Stephon Diggs. But Tank Dell looked as though he could have been the number 1 receiver last year on this team as the season progressed. I understand that he only played in 11 games due to injury, but he was the wide receiver 19 in PPR points per game. He had 75 targets, 47 receptions, 709 receiving yards, and 7 total touchdowns, ranking 18th at wide receiver. As a rookie, in terms of efficiency, things were very nice. I like. Shout out Borat. 10th in fantasy points per target, 11th in fantasy points per route, 14th in yards per route run, 21st in yards per reception, and the quarterback play was solid, right? We are drafting a player on a very solid offense that is going to be dealing out back shots game in and game out. 21st in yards per target for Tank Dell last season. If you watched this interview earlier on in the offseason, and again, take it with a grain of salt, but quarterback CJ Stroud mentioned a couple of months ago that if he could create a NFL offense out of any player in the league, right? You can pick anyone. You don't have to just pick Texans players. He picked a team, didn't include Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs, but you want to know who he did include? Tank Dell. Tank Dell has freaky speed. He is incredibly fast. He is able to get open. He scored a touchdown in that first preseason game, and I think people are really finicky on drafting Tank Dell because of the addition of Stephon Diggs. I think there's a better chance that Tank Dell is the number 1 receiver on this team compared to Stephon Diggs. I think it will rank in terms of targets. Nico Collins, Tank Dell, then Stephon Diggs, and you have to draft Kendrick Lamar style, right? You have to draft Tank Dell much later than you have to draft Stephon Diggs or Nico Collins. Again, I love Nico Collins. I'm kind of out on Stephon Diggs, but Tank Dell, pick 62, wide receiver 29. Again, if this guy's your wide receiver 3, your flex, you are sitting pretty due to the weekly upside that he possesses. At number 8, we move to Calvin Ridley. Now, Calvin Ridley is a player that will instantly make some people shut down. They might just dislike the video. Nick, you told me to draft Calvin Ridley last year, and guess what, Nick? He fucking sucked, right? He was the wide receiver 28 in PPR points per game, wide receiver 18 in PPR. I get he was dusty last year. He's the wide receiver 33, though, off the board now at pick 77. I understand that Calvin Ridley had a down season, and some of that could be attested to him just dropping balls that were just right in his hands. I don't know how he dropped those, but it was 51st in terms of target accuracy last season for Calvin Ridley, though he was 20th in dominator rating and 8th in air yards, 14th in targets, 23rd in receptions, 24th in receiving yards, and 11th in total touchdowns. The reason why I am here to declare that Calvin Ridley is a guy that I really like is because of the DeAndre Hopkins injury. He suffered a knee injury during practice early in August, which puts his week 1 availability in jeopardy. Shout out Aaron Rodgers. The reason why that is a reason to like Calvin Ridley more is a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who's a little bit older. The injury could linger for longer. I understand Calvin Ridley is not a spring chicken, but Calvin Ridley is not hurt right now. Knock on wood. Also, DeAndre Hopkins is a baller. He's going to want to force himself to come back. Like, hey, I'm not missing week 1. I'm DeAndre fucking Hopkins. And I definitely believe that he will be there in week number 1. But that also opens the door for more chances that he ends up re-aggravating his injury because he forces himself back for week number 1. And if he's banged up playing, he's not going to be himself. Sure, is he still a solid wide receiver? 100%. I'm not going to doubt DeAndre Hopkins' ability, but his availability could be a question. If he does end up re-aggravating that, that could be something that ends up fucking with his whole entire season. The team brings in Brian Callahan as the new head coach, who was the former Bengals offensive coordinator. I think if Calvin Ridley is the number 1 receiver in targets, Will Levis is incredibly underrated. Now, I'm not going to sit here and give this guy some dome like that Gia Duddy video, but what I'm going to tell you is that Calvin Ridley is a wide receiver that can be an alpha wide receiver in an offense. And last year, I understand while he did end up sucking, he was a guy that was coming off of a large layoff. Now, 1 year down, he's already played a whole last season. Maybe with the rust shaken off, he's going to have a better season, and his price is wide receiver 33. So to be a league winner as the wide receiver 33, he doesn't need to be like some top 10 wide receiver. As long as he's a consistent wide receiver 2, you are going to be very happy, and you don't even have to draft him as that. At number 9, we got Rashee Rice. And I did talk about Rashee Rice recently, but due to something that happened yesterday in preseason, we need to talk him up, fluff him up a little bit more. Aggregate ADP wide receiver 36 at pick 81. Hollywood Brown suffered a sternovascular dislocation. Now, I make this joke all the time. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins or on the other dudes you can see on the other tube. That is the opposite of blue. I guess not the opposite, but anyone with a brain knows what I mean, right? Sternoclavicular dislocation. So I go on the internet, I say, Nick, I don't say Nick, I'm like, Siri. I don't use fucking Siri. Who the hell uses Siri except for like older people? I don't see anyone that's around my age using Siri. But what I will tell, and old people just love that thing. Like my uncle, when we went to go visit him, he was using that shit all the time. And I guess he's not even that old, but older than me, right? I'm 25. But so he suffers this injury. I'm like, what does this mean? I go and read into it. It says he'll be ready to come back in around 4 to 6 weeks, which will tell you, hey, missing the start of the season isn't great, right? Rashee Rice is the number 1 receiver on this team now, very clearly, right? I know they have Xavier Worthy, but he's a rookie. They have Hollywood Brown, but Hollywood Brown is hurt. And it also seems like Rashee Rice's ADP is going to keep going up and up because the chance that he even gets suspended now seems a lot lower. His court date on his driving incident, him trying to be a member of the Fast and Furious, ended up being pushed to December 9th. And with how the NFL normally acts, they're not going to go ahead and suspend the guy before he has that court date. And then even when they go to try to suspend him, he can just push it off to the next season, similar to what happened with Alvin Kamara. So I don't think they're going to swing the ban hammer down on Rashee Rice without him having the actual court date. And I think he's going to be able to push it off till next season. So I think there's a chance he doesn't get suspended at all. And the only reason why he was falling down the rankings, the draft boards, is because we didn't know if he was going to be ready to go for a certain amount of time, right? We could have easily seen him get suspended for 3, 4, 5, 6 games, maybe miss the first 6 games of the season. Now, there's obviously always the outside chance that he gets suspended at the end of the season, but again, I don't think that's very likely. So with Hollywood Brown hurt, and with how Rashee Rice started to catch fire, Hunger Games style, towards the end of last season, I'm starting to feel really confident on Rice. Rice, in terms of efficiency, 2nd in target accuracy, 3rd in target separation, 10th in yards per route run, 7th in fantasy points per route run, and 16th in route win rate as a rookie. Again, important to understand that he really started to step on the gas, both on and off the field, towards the end of last season. From weeks 12 on, this guy was fantastic. 24 points up against the Raiders, 14 the week after against the Packers, 18 against the Bills, 24 up against the Patriots, 11 up against the Raiders, and then he closed out the season with 17 in week 17. And then in the playoffs, he continues to show solid games. 27 points against the Dolphins. Sure, he simmers down a bit against the Bills and the Ravens with 8-12. And then the Super Bowl, he scored 10 points, but he had 8 receptions in 3 out of 4 postseason games. I get they bring in these other wide receivers. They have Travis Kelce, but Rashee Rice is going to be the number 1 receiver on this offense. And if you can draft the number 1 receiver on a Patrick Mahomes offense at pick 81, wide receiver 36, you should do it every single time. Before we get on into the last player of today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends, our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy, they're the best place to do best ball fantasy football drafts this summer. The best part about best ball is it's the draft and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. You do the draft and that's it. Underdog will automatically put the highest scores into your lineup for you at the end of every single week. Their main tournament, Best Ball Mania 5, $25 to enter, $1.5 million to first place. They have buy-ins with as low as $3, $5, $7, $10 tournaments. There's going to be $1,000 tournaments released on there. If you want to prepare for your fantasy football draft, a good place to do it is on Underdog Fantasy. So make sure you guys check that out. Link in the video description or promo code Notorious. You receive a special pick plus up to $250 if you are a first-time depositor. At number 10, we got Keon Coleman. Now, earlier on in the offseason, I was pretty out on Keon Coleman. I was just going to draft Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. I was probably just going to draft Dalton fucking Kincaid, right? Because I think Dalton Kincaid is the upside to be the leader in targets in this offense. And I think James Cook could be the number 2 target. But the more I thought about it, the more I had an epiphany, right? And I realized that Keon Coleman will probably end up being the wide receiver 1 in terms of targets. Why is that? For one, Josh Allen really pushed the team to draft this guy. He's coming off the board as the wide receiver 45 at pick 98. He was the 33rd overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. Now, the biggest kind of dent against this guy's profile is that the numbers, right? In terms of college, he was never really this guy that really stuck out, right? He didn't stick out like a sore thumb. He never really had a crazy season, right? We talked about Marvin Harrison's numbers, right? We talk about these humongous, larger-than-life numbers, back-to-back seasons, whereas Keon Coleman put up in Florida State last year at 20 years old, 12 games played, 50 receptions on 90 targets for 658 yards, 13.2 yards per reception with a 20.8% target share and 11 receiving touchdowns, right? Nothing crazy, nothing that jumps off the screen. When I read that, no one's popping a chub downstairs, right? But when you look at their depth chart of Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Shavers, Mac Hollins, Chase Claypool, MVS, none of those guys jump off of the screen either. Josh Allen noted earlier on in the offseason process that Keon Coleman's game is off the charts, and the beat reporters are legitimately fondling this guy's grundle weekly. Keon Coleman posted a 100% route participation with the starting wide receivers for the Bills in preseason game number 1, and he led the team with 3 targets, 27%. I understand. Is this the largest sample size? No, it's just 1 week. So again, don't just take week 1 as the gospel. He's going to play 100% of the snaps all the time. Of course not. But what you need to get is that if Josh Allen wants him out there, he's going to be out there. And if Josh Allen wants to target him as much as he did with that very small sample size, it is very possible that Keon Coleman absolutely dominates 50 Shades of Grey style at ADP. Now, I do think the Bills' offense is going to be worse than they were with Stephon Diggs, but they could still easily be a top 10, top 8 offense in the National Football League. Another negative on Keon Coleman is his ability to separate. We saw that being an issue in college. We also saw that as an issue in the preseason week 1 game. But again, there are risks to Keon Coleman. That's why he's going as the wide receiver 45, not the wide receiver 12, right? There are risks, there are warts on his profile, but the upside to me greatly outweighs the risk. Honorable mentions, guys I wanted to mention but didn't, Malik Neighbors. Now, Malik Neighbors did just suffer an injury a couple of minutes ago because he was going to be a part of this video. He was initially, I had all his numbers written out. He was a part of the top 6 wide receiver league winners, but he did suffer a minor ankle sprain. That is the belief right now. So that just made it so I don't want to talk about him as positively because that could be something that lingers into the season. Again, that's something you want to follow the updates for before you go gung-ho. And again, while I really love Malik Neighbors, I'm going to temper back a little bit. I also like George Pickens and Amari Cooper. But the fact that Brandon Ayuk might be the wide receiver one on both of those teams made it so I felt like I couldn't talk about them, because if we fast forward 3 days from now and Ayuk is a Steeler or Ayuk is a Cleveland Brown, then the take is basically irrelevant. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you have not seen them already. Hit that subscribe button down below if you're new. Whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. Again, check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And let me know down below in the comment section any receivers that I didn't talk about, or some receivers I talked about in today's video that you disagree with. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.